question.
Sorry.
As an assistant, how far is too far when you want to push for something better to club in the position that you're in? And then my second question would be, you got two guys at the same course applying for superintendent's job. One gets a letter from the current course he's on, and the other guy doesn't. Do you think that makes a difference in where the resumes are going to? That makes sense.
Okay, I'll try and decipher how you said that, but say the first part again.
I'll answer the first one for you to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
You push it with your superintendent, and at the point that your superintendent really squashes you and says they don't want to hear about it anymore, I would let it ride. I mean, but that's really, you know, I think that's really the point. And but again, you know, that's where, you know, you via talking to other superintendents, assistants, some of the networking and stuff that you make, you know, it may be a situation, Eric, where you can, you know, gosh, you know, they do this here, they do it here, they do it here, you know, it's just a change, you know, maybe it's not something that costs any extra money, it's just doing something differently, and you know, you can only push as hard as you can push on that. But once your immediate boss, I don't care whether it's, you know, I deal with it all the time in our organization. When they say, we're not doing that, that's a good time to let it go for a while.
You know, there's an old story my dad told me that's been around for years. You know, plant the seed for today that may grow the trees for tomorrow that may provide the shade for the next generation. And so I work for a really tough as a nail guy, United States Marine Corps guy, Jim Brewer, 37 years, general manager at LA Country Club. That's a tough place to work and really tough to be a general manager. And I always had the idea, he's my supervisor, so when I went in, I'd say, Mr. Brewer, I want you to think about the idea of using a growth regulator on the fairways. And a mini second later, he says, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard of. He says, we have a hard enough time with our growing season to grow this Bermuda grass. Why would you want to do that? And so that's when it's time for me to back off, okay? I'm not done, but it's time for me to back off. And so I might mention it again within a year or something like that. And then I'm not smart, but I'm shrewd. So, you know, I go out to the manufacturer and say, you know, I sure would like to get enough material to apply Primo to a couple of my fairways for a season. And I can guarantee you if it does what it says it's supposed to do, which it did, we'll be buying enough to spray, you know, 70 acres worth of fairways. So it's going to be a good return on investment. So we put the Primo down, and common Bermuda grass, you know, top 15 club in common Bermuda grass. So man, it tightened that internodal spacing. You got that stuff looking just like hybrid Bermuda. So I said to Mr. Brewer, I said, what's the best two looking fairways on the golf course? He goes, oh, North Course number 1 and number 18. Not even a stretch of the imagination. They're the best. He says, used to be our worst. He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm applying Primo. He says, I thought I told you not to buy that stuff. And I said, yes, sir, you did, and I didn't buy it. I said, I got it from the manufacturer. But I strongly suggest we get on a program. He says, put the money in the budget. So I tell you that story because there's ways to get what you want, but there's other things that are sacred cows. And, you know, if you were to say at Marion, I think we can get some better looking flag sticks than what we have here. That'd probably be a game loser, all right? But the reality is you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. And I had a guy working for me that, you know, I used to write out the superintendent on the course would write out what's to be sprayed on the greens or whatever surface. And some guy that was at a second assistant level decided to use something else. That's a game breaker. That's not, you know, I'm perfectly capable of getting fired on my own. I don't need anybody working for me to help me do that. So that
you
guy
won't have to
wasn't
worry about if you're assistant too long at that club.
No. That's not a mistake. That's thinking you know more than the superintendent, and your days are limited.
Now, his second question, I'll say it again so he's not confused, is basically you have two assistants that I guess are close to being equals at a golf club. They both apply for a job, and the current superintendent writes a letter or whatever for one, or says, use me as a reference for one, but does it for the other one, is that a game changer, right? That's basically what you're thinking.
Okay, that is clear. Thank you very much. I'm going to pick up the phone and call the superintendent, and he may not tell me straight out, but I got to ascertain whether or not he doesn't want to lose the guy, is why he didn't write a letter or use him as a reference, or the other guy is so bad he wants to get him out of his system and somebody else in. So it's not everything that it seems like it may be. And when I'm down to 6, 7 people at that point in the search, I'm going to be on the phone. I'm going to be talking to people that they work for. And, if somebody gives me, he was employed from such and such a date to such and such a date, and that's all I can tell you, that's code for watch out. This is not a good deal here. But I'm a pretty good interpreter of people when they communicate, and I'll tell whether they're being real or giving me a bunch of baloney.
Silence on the end of the phone when somebody asks about you is usually not a good indicator. So sometimes by saying nothing, people say an awful lot.
When somebody called me and said, what can you tell me about so-and-so, and my response is, oh. Well, for legal reasons, I really can't comment on that individual. I didn't say anything bad about him, did I? But I'm sure not going to say anything good about him. If you work for me and you work well, 25 years later, I'll still be touting, the good things you did. But I get, we talk about being networked and connected. I had a guy that worked for me 20 years earlier, left. He was okay as an employee. Hadn't heard from him in 20 years. Loses his job, calls me up, and says, can you help me out? I said, where you been, man? He said, I've been in Southeast Ohio. I said, I don't care geographically where you've been. You talked to me for the first time in 20 years, and now I'm your new best friend. That's about this networking. Thanksgiving is a nice time to send an email or a card how thankful you are for the mentoring and what people have done. There's different, if you aren't reaching out a couple times a year to somebody, as you said, as an agronomist, and you saw this guy's course 5 years ago or 7 years ago, shame on you, because your network is the one with 6 names on it, not with 56 names on it.